Ethiopia following the country's 7th general election, which was held on the 1st of June. The National Election Board of Ethiopia says that results have now been declared in about 825 of the 1,138 targeted constituencies, with verification and certification of the remaining results are still underway. Now, early indications suggest that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's ruling Prosperity Party is on course to retain its parliamentary majority. Although the election took place against the backdrop of ongoing security challenges, the exclusion of some conflict-affected areas from voting and concerns raised by opposition groups and civil society organizations. Well, to help us unpack what the election means for Ethiopia and the wider Horn of Africa, we're now joined by Ethiopian author, journalist and human rights advocate Befekadu Hailu. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
So 825 constituencies have declared results so far from 1,138. At this stage, is that normal in this process, given the size of the country and the numbers of people voting?
According to the law, within 5 days, at least at constituency level, where people voted, the results should be known, because polling stations post the results immediately after the counts ended. So it should be known, but the detail, the national aggregation is not yet known, because those results, even the 825, by now I think they should complete everything, because the national results should be announced in 10 days according to the law. So it's pretty common. Previously, we know who is winning nationally at this point.
Talking about who's winning nationally, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's Prosperity Party looks set and is expected to secure another victory, a commanding majority, actually. I guess the question that a lot of people might have is, does this represent genuine political support? Or does it talk more about a fragmented opposition? Maybe it's a combination of both. Were your thoughts?
Yes, of course. No one. I have previously also told this channel that this process was more of a ritual than a democratic exercise. Therefore, nobody in Ethiopia believes that this is the true competition that we can see if the political landscape was even for everyone. As you said, the opposition political parties are fragmented. So, that means the opposition votes are also divided. But even when you look deeper into the votes, majority, overwhelming majority of the votes go to the Prosperity Party. That indicates, how intense the situation is. People mostly participating in the voting are supporters of the ruling party. The ruling party has dozens of millions members that are under its benefit system. That's one. Also, people, especially majority of people in Ethiopia, reside in rural areas, and they are scared of, they don't believe the secretive polling systems. They vote for the ruling party regardless of the secretive, voting system. So there are conflicts as well. And the political landscape in general does not encourage both the competitive political.
Hello, are you still there?
Parties and the voters to witness, or this is can you listen to him? Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
we can hear you now. We'd
I,
lost you for a few seconds, but thankfully we can hear you. Let me ask you this next question, though. Several areas, Tigray region and parts of Amhara and Oromia, didn't participate fully in this election. Are the numbers significant enough, do you think, that questions could be raised about the credibility of the and the representativeness of the final result?
yeah, the credibility of the final results may be questioned because the political landscape was inclined to the ruling party, to the incumbent. Well, in fact, the entire Tigray region did not vote, not only now, but in the previous election as well. We are getting into the second term of the parliament without any representative from the Tigray region. The same was true, by the way, in Amhara region, which is wrecked by conflicts recently, and in the previous election, 19 constituencies were not represented in the parliament. Now, at least according to official statements, 8 constituencies are not going to be represented in the parliament because voting did not happen. And I think the numbers will increase because there were disruptions during the polling day. In Oromia, we did not know if there are any constituencies that did not vote this year, but in the previous election, at least 8 constituencies did not vote. That means 8 of the parliamentary seats were vacant in the parliament. So, especially for the Tigray region, whose entire representatives are not able to make it to the parliament, it is very unpleasant scenario. Even within the sham the sham practice of election, I think it is better to have representatives from your constituency that are probably, representing the ruling party rather than not having anyone in the parliament that is making laws and passing decisions that affect your life. So it is, of course, it has more effect than credibility.
Talking about more effect than credibility, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Tigray and Addis Ababa were pretty much involved in a civil war. Could there be consequences in areas like Tigray? Amhara, Oromia also have seen their fair share of unrest as a result of this election.
Yeah, I mean, there is a political crisis now, as you stated. Conflicts are proliferated, and even though the Tigray war was resolved in a peace deal signed in Pretoria in some 3 years ago, the situation is still tense now. The federal government and the Tigray government are in no peace, no war situation, and people are anticipating that war might start anytime now. So the problem underneath is, the political crisis. There must be dialogue, and every actor involved in violence means they must resort to dialogue, and the international community, the local citizens, and everyone should push every political actors, including the federal government, the Tigray government, insurgents in Amhara and Oromia, to resort for peaceful and peaceful means of resolution to these conflicts. Otherwise, people are suffering. Children are not going to school. Health systems are crumbling, and it's an everyday challenge for people residing in these conflict-affected areas.
5 years ago, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came into power promising democratic reform. He was promising huge changes, and I think he got a Nobel Peace Prize even. 5 years on, how are people measuring what he's done in terms of promises that he made?
It's actually approaching almost 10 years now, 8.5 years since he came to power. And yes, like you mentioned, when he came, there was widespread optimism, and he promised a series of political reforms. But that did not materialize as political contestations started to arise. He continued to consolidate his power. And the first of the conflicts actually emerged in Oromia region, the largest regional state in Ethiopia, where he himself is from. And it started when one of the armed groups that made reconciliation or peace agreements with the federal government refused to disarm by claiming that the federal government is not upholding the peace agreements. Then the tension with the Tigray government followed in, and it was one of the most devastating conflicts in our continent. It took 2 years, and hundreds of thousands of people died as a result of it. Then the peace agreement came in. But the ally for the federal government in this war, where Amhara use groups. They are known as Fano. Now the Fano entered into conflict. Even reportedly, the Fano are supported by the Eritrean government, which actually made peace with the federal government. And it is also as a result of this peace agreement with Eritrea that Abiy Ahmed received a Nobel Peace Prize. Unfortunately, now in Amhara, the conflicts are widespread, and it is due to that some of the election constituencies were not able to have elections. And we have also heard during polling day, at least 143 polling stations were disrupted, and they were not able to continue voting on the voting day due to disruptions of these insurgents in Amhara and Oromia regions. So all in all, I mean, the situation is bad, and Abiy did not keep his promises as he consolidated his power. And people are frustrated, to be honest. The economy is, I think, in a bad shape. The living cost is skyrocketing, and there are new policy measures like floating the foreign exchange, which is burdening the poor at large, and people are not able to move from one place to another due to the conflicts, and it is a sad state. Everyone is concerned, but no one knows what to do. It is up to the people in power to resolve this and somehow give the people a truce to a safe life.
And perhaps very briefly, Ethiopia, where it's located, does this election matter for the region and beyond? I mean, I'm thinking even of countries like Egypt as far as the north when it comes to the Grand Renaissance Dam, but also the Horn of Africa. Does this election matter? Have they been watching and curious and maybe even concerned?
I think whatever the situation, elections are better than no elections. I don't want Ethiopia to be Eritrea or something like that. So I'm glad that the elections are held, even though we could predict the winner ahead. So it kind of matters in a way. At least we are, trying to periodically vote, even if we could not change the government. So it is important in that. Also, it has legal importance. The government should renew its mandate legally only through elections. We want that practice to continue regardless of the political situation, whether it is defeated or not. Also, I think that especially in the side of the government, in the ruling parties, they want this election for international legitimacy. The international community, as you know, might criticize the process and everything, but at the end, they will recognize the government that renewed its mandate in its own electoral process.
All right. Befekadu, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much indeed for your insights and your analysis on the Ethiopian elections. Thank you very much for joining us.
Have a good day.
That was Befekadu Hailu, who's an author and human rights activist in Tanzania, giving us his take on the Ethiopian elections. The results not final yet, but they're certainly quite a significant way ahead in terms of vote counting, and it looks like President Abiy Ahmed will get another term. It's 7:30, and it's time for your news.